I'll quickly rifle through the agenda, tell you a little bit about Cadence, some of the scenarios I'm going to cover today in the demonstration, and then of course Q&A, and we'll take it from there. We've been getting a lot of questions about accounts payable automation, of course, since the pandemic hit, and that's really what we're going to show off today of what we've implemented elsewhere and how you don't need a big box product usually to automate a few things. So a little bit about Cadence. We started in 2013. We work all across North America and deliver remotely. We've been doing that since before the pandemic. We've done close to 80 projects in 40 different locations, and we simply help organizations struggling with digital transformation, help you get into new things and do things a little bit differently than the paper world. We're partnered with 3 main software companies, OpenText, Microsoft, and SAP. And we have specific pillars inside of each of those that we focus on. So with OpenText, we focus on accounts payable processes, HR onboarding, and 2 of their main products, Extended ECM and Intelligent Capture. That's also called Captiva, used to be called Input Excel. You've recognized those product names. On the Microsoft side, we focus on SharePoint and SharePoint Online for records management, Microsoft Teams functionality for document storage and archiving, and anything to do with Power Apps and Power Automate. On the SAP side, we focus again on the accounts payable side, which is vendor invoice management. If you do have SAP, check out vendor invoice management from OpenText. It's sold both by SAP and OpenText. It's an amazing catalyst product for anything accounts payable. We also do intelligent capture. So again, that out of paper into the digital world with intelligent capture for SAP, and SuccessFactors, that's the HR system for document archiving. A bit about how we got started, because I just like to kind of tell our story. We started on the customer side. I was working at a municipality. It was an abysmal implementation by a subpar services provider and partner of a software company. They came in, they blew $300,000 in 3 months. We basically had nothing as an organization. So we fired the vendor, fired the partner of the software company, and started to implement it ourselves. I kind of sat there and said, if this is the bar in the industry and this is how they were awarded this business through a procurement, there's got to be a lot better way to do this. So that kind of rolls into the values that we bring to a project. We name resources on every project. We don't bait and switch from our proposal into the resources you're going to get on your project. We don't do resource assignment pools where randomly you'll get Johnny today and Jimmy tomorrow. We stay on budget. We track everything in our project tracking system. We'll tell you the truth, even if it's difficult to hear. So there are some, stressful conversations throughout a project where we're going to make decisions together on how functionality should determine and how processes should run. So we're going to give you our honest feedback there, but we absolutely deliver at the end. And one other thing I challenge with any vendors you're looking to engage with is, do they actually use what they're going to go implement? We use the products that we implement. For the demonstration today, I'm going to go through one of the accounts payable invoice automation scenarios that we give a demonstration to at least weekly. On top of that, I'm going to go through it from both an OpenText system perspective of capturing an invoice to approving that invoice, whether it's a PO or a non-PO invoice. So just kind of the goals of what we see from clients and where we've had success here is you want to streamline the AP invoice process. We want to reduce email inbox usage. And what I mean by that is we've went into some organizations where the shared mailbox, so it could be like invoices@yourcompany.com, that shared mailbox is accessed by 5 to 6 accounts payable people, and they're flagging the invoices and the emails in different colors to know whose color is whose and what's next for them to do. So we want to reduce that inbox usage and automate that. We want to automate that with invoice ingestion. And then our goal is to really have a single source of truth for an invoice upon approval. So once it's approved and we're going to go actually process that payment, whether that's check or an ACH or a wire, we want to make sure that that's all stored in a single location. So how we can actually accomplish that is we get those vendor invoices in, they come in all different formats from all different vendors. We're going to centralize them all to a specific mailbox. So we're going to pull them all into invoices@yourdomain.com. And we're going to have a scheduled pickup from the capture solution called Intelligent Capture. So that's going to go and pick up those invoices every minute and start to process them and get them ready for the next stage, which is the PDFing of them and actually going through and doing the field capture. So we can do both OCR recognition, so we will turn the images into machine readable text. Once they're machine readable text, we can do ICR field capture, which is intelligent character recognition, and basically do a word search on the document. So we don't necessarily have to say, the invoice number is always in the top right or the total is always in the bottom right. We can say, go find the word total, look around the word total for something with a dollar sign and grab the digits around that, and that is our total. So that's ICR recognition. We set up our template in the system to make sure that we're grabbing the appropriate information off of an invoice. So usually it's the invoice number, the date, the amount, the PO number if there is one, the vendor name, and the line item. And then with that, we're able to go through and do a number of different validation points with other systems. So we can take this group of fields and actually go through, and if we do have a PO number and potentially even a goods receipt, we can do a 2- or 3-way match with your ERP system. So that lets us actually push or pull data out of the capture side of things that we've pulled off of the image into a field, send that field over to the ERP system. That can be Dynamics, that can be SAP, that can be Oracle. We've worked with many other systems, one specifically called Natural. We can grab that information and then pull things back. So we could simply just push a vendor name and address, pull that back to validate that they're a valid vendor. We could push that through from a PO number and say, are we going to send all the line items over to the ERP system, perform that matching, and then potentially auto pay or auto approve that invoice? So those are options, and really the golden path here in terms of how to go through and process an invoice very quickly without needing a person to go through and do this. We've worked with companies that have a no PO, no pay policy. That is a lot of work up front, but it is a lot easier downstream when you go through and actually have to do the payment side of the invoices coming in. So if this isn't a scenario, which there's a comfort level that needs to be had here in order to run through this, we can then determine the confidence rating on the image that's captured. So if we're not doing a 2- or 3-way match immediately from the capture side of things, we're going to go through and the system maybe didn't capture something confidently. There wasn't a PO number on it, so we can't do a match and instantly pay. Or a field was missing, maybe they didn't put a date on it, or the terms didn't match something else. We can flag that invoice and image as low confidence and send that off to validation with somebody. So what they're going to be given in the validation side of things is the fields will be on one side of their screen, and they'll have the image of the invoice on the other side of the screen. And this will actually let them go through and key in anything that was missing, and also train the system if there's something that wasn't accurate in the capture. So if it didn't grab the invoice number in the right area, we want to make sure we can make that more accurate for next time. Once they've validated that, we can then proceed into the next step. So we can put this into a workflow engine called Content Suite. That's an OpenText product. There's other products that can do this as well. And we can actually start doing the workflow side of things based on that now being an accurate capture and something that we're confident in. If, however, we run into a scenario where we don't have a PO number, we're not going to do the matching, but the system did capture everything accurately, we can take the high confidence path, skip validation altogether, and instantly start a workflow for approval. As we go through and start that workflow, we're going to add in the PDF and all the appropriate metadata tags that came out of the capture side of things. And then we can actually go through and submit that information over to the ERP if we like, and actually have a view attachment button back from that ERP system to the image that's stored in the document management side. So don't actually store the image, the PDF of the invoice that is approved in the ERP system. We can store that in another system that will house that as that single source of truth, and tag that with the appropriate metadata in both the ERP system as well as the document storage system. So that's the setup to show you the demo. I'm going to break off from this screen, jump into the demonstration, and then I'll show you this kind of in action. So I'm going to mimic sending in an invoice here. This would be something that a vendor would do. They're going to send this into a central mailbox. That invoice is then going to be picked up by a capture solution. So this is just a simple send. We're going to jump into the capture side of things. And we're going to go through the scenario here that we're assuming that this requires validation, so that something was either captured on the low confidence side of things. And then we actually have to go through and capture this with maybe keying in some data or doing something else. So this was polling and checking for work. We now have the invoice in the system. I'll actually show you what that looks like before we pull it up. So this is the invoice that we have. I'll just open this in Adobe. So we have an invoice number. We have a PO number. We're going to verify that PO number in the system, but we're still going to go forward with a workflow approval. We have a few line items. We have a subtotal, tax, and a total. And we have the vendor name up here, and they put their fancy logo on there as well. So what that looks like from a validation side of things is our images here, our fields are below, and we can change where they are. And we can simply jump through the fields to validate that everything is accurate. And I can just hit the tab key on my keyboard. It's going to highlight the text field that's actually in the image that's captured and show you the relevant information for that field. If something doesn't line up, they didn't put the total in right, they got 4 decimal places in there or something like that, we can stop, and this has to be validated and keyed in. Now, one extra field that's on here is the ability to verify the PO. So we can actually see that the PO was verified by another system, and 57315 as a purchase order number is a valid PO in our ERP system, and now we're able to proceed. So we can put those checks and balances in here, just like on the slide deck. Right here, we're in this gray middle box, and we're going through and validating those fields with the ERP system, but we're not going to do the matching. I'm going to push this forward. We're going to finish this task. We don't need any more eyes on it. And we're going to open up our content management system. So this is the system that can run the storage and the workflow side of things. And in this system, everything's fully text searchable. So the reason we do the OCR from the capture side of things is so we can search it. If we just go in the system and search Acme later, it's going to come up as search results. I have a number of different assignments to do in the system. I'm given 2 days to go through and approve this invoice. It's due Friday at just after 11 o'clock. And I can go in here and review the Acme invoice that came in. So all that information that was captured from the capture system is pushed into the content management system and now up for invoice approval. So I'm logged in as Jordan here. I have a few directions: review the invoice information, click send on when finished. So I can pull up the invoice. I can view it in context next to my actual field information on the left. Again, if I've never seen this before, I do want to look and say, yeah, I know it's Acme. They send me this bill every month. 6547 is the invoice. The account number, PO number is 57315. That looks good. I'm ready to proceed here. If, however, at this point, I don't just want to send it on, I want to send this kind of an audible or send it off for approval somewhere else, I can click send for review and pick somebody else to go through and do an approval. Now, in the essence of time, I'm just going to send on. We're going to take the happy path today, and I'll send this workflow on. Now, I'm playing multiple roles in the system, so I don't want to log out and log in. So the next person in line would be given another approval. This one's approve invoice, a secondary approval. They need to click send to corrections if there's anything required. And they need to actually go through, do the same kind of review, and they can actually go look at any past activities that have happened. So I can see that Jordan's done a few things on this already. Everything is fully audited in this system. So if somebody downloads, prints, opens, reads, does anything with this document or this workflow, the system will track it. It's very good to draw out some of those metrics later to see how quickly steps are being completed by people and how long it takes you to go end to end in your process for any kind of approval. Now, if I want to go through and approve this, these fields are non-editable at this point. I can see the previous approval was done by Jordan, and I can push this one forward. The next step in the approval side of things is the ability for finance to go through and actually process the payment associated with this invoice. So I'm going to hit approve. Next task pops up, which is for accounting. So accounting is going to come in here, and they have different information required. They need to put in a payment date, a type, a confirmation number, and optionally a check number if the payment type is check. So they're given a form here. This is the point where we can start to push and pull information at the bottom from the ERP system here. So we can push those fields over, and we can actually push that document link back from the ERP system to the content management system. So I'm going to put in a payment date, and we'll say we're going to run this at the end of the month. We're going to say it's a check, confirmation number, and we'll say our check number is 1,005. So we can type in all that information that can submit off to the ERP system, and it can provide a link, a linkage to this Acme invoice, which will now be stored in the content management side of things. I'm going to send that forward, and that really completes the approval side of the workflow.
It talks about some of the stuff that we've had conversations about, so we'll maybe review it again later. Okay, thanks.
I think you're good, Jordan.
Thank you, Jared. So that's kind of the quick 20-minute or so demonstration on the functionality regarding the accounts payable invoice automation, or what Jared refers to as a super slide. So if you do have questions, just chime in, unmute at this point, and I'll leave this slide up for now just so we can kind of talk to this point, which I'm sure there'll be questions on.
Jordan, you didn't mention anything about account codes and where that gets checked and set up.
Like GLs and...
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, so the GLs we'd actually put in the workflow form, and they can either be done upfront on the capture side of things here, or they can be pushed later into the workflow approval. It really depends on the process. But the takeaway, I think, Peter, is that if these two systems can communicate, we're able to push and pull data between them and inject the requirement, the required input, at any point in the process, pre-workflow or during workflow.
And you mentioned something about putting check numbers in. If the system wouldn't know the check number necessarily at that point, it would just do it automatically later on. Is that how that would work?
Yeah, we're working on a few projects actually with batch checks, which is quite a interesting process to go through. But yes, if the check numbers are not known, they can be put in later, kind of almost a backdating. Or if they are auto-generated by a system, we integrate with that system that will pull the check numbers and put them in there.
Great, thank you.
Now we have a question from Clay. Go ahead, Clay.
Yeah, so on the workflow, the approval process following, once the purchase order has been verified, can the workflow as far as who needs to approve that invoice be determined by the budget number that's on the purchase order? In our environment, if it comes from one particular, a myriad of budgets, it might have to get routed differently based on the budget number that's associated with the PO for that invoice.
100%. So we usually end up with an approvals matrix behind the scenes based on the information that's captured and then routing appropriately. So it is still one workflow map or process, but it has many different branches off of it to go for approval. So it's completely dynamic behind the scenes. Definitely not the easy one I showed today.
All right, great, thank you.
Any other questions from anybody today? Anything you've seen?
So Jordan, this builds on a PO system that's already in place, and I'm wondering if we're still using paper POs. How do you have a system that helps with the POs?
We do not have a system with the POs, but if you do want to work a hybrid model between your paper PO system and some kind of modification on what you see here, I would track those paper POs in something very simple. We can actually track them inside of OpenText in the repository in a form, and we could validate with that as kind of a middle ground for now until you get set up on something more formal for PO generation.
I guess we're looking for a system that incorporates the POs. We want to get off paper, of course, but it doesn't sound like you have it set up right now. You're just using it. We're on Dynamics, and so Dynamics has a PO system. You're assuming that we'd be using that system, I guess. That's
correct. Yeah, the Dynamics would handle that. We wouldn't we'd be stepping out of bounds if we said we could do that kind of stuff with the the content management side. That I don't think that'd be the right fit.
Great, thank you.
Okay, well, that sounds like most of the questions for now. If you can think of any, for us, you can ask them throughout this closing or anytime afterwards. So we are doing a bit of an experiment today with this QR code. So if someone wants to scan that and just type in chat that it actually works, that would be fantastic. At the end of the day, we are a software solutions implementation company, and we do one hell of an implementation. So we'd love to have a conversation with you, and we encourage you to tell us your pain points. We've seen it all, and we'd love to provide the solution catered specifically to your organization. It's what we do. So feel free to check out our website, follow along on LinkedIn, reach out directly to Jordan or myself, and thank you all very much for attending today. We look forward to having a further conversation. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday.